This is the Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Jake Ryan of Tradecraft Capital. Jake, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into early stage funding?
About 4 years ago, I was listening and I found Angel List. I started to look at early stage investing. I was reading some books and blog posts and started just with some small, over the years, I think I'm 3 years into 3.5, and I've made 11 investments, and that's how I started. Angel investing is a little different because you're making bets and you don't know if you've made good bets or not for 7 to 10 years. So we'll see. Out of 11 of those investments get subsequent rounds of investing. So far, so good.
Well, great. Well, now you're getting into the crypto asset world with your fund. Can you tell us more about how that works?
Yeah, I started Tradecraft Capital this year. I really started to get into Bitcoin and crypto assets in December of 2015. And like any investment, I started to get more and more conviction as I read about it and really did more research. I started to get a lot more conviction in about May of 2017. And then towards the end of last year, I started to think it might be possible to start a fund. And so in January this year, I raised money from about 20 partners and started Tradecraft. So I think it's really exciting times for crypto. I think for this generation, it'll be the transformative industry, and so I wanted to be there.
And so what does your fund invest in when you see these opportunities out there? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so for the most part, I'm looking at exchange traded assets. So I'm not taking a VC approach where I'm trying to get into a seed stage equity or trying to get into ICOs, though I have made an ICO investment. That's not the main focus. I'm looking for what types of product or function does the crypto asset deliver on? How big is the community that is, do they have a rabid following? Are they getting massive adoption? I like to look at the technology. I have a degree in computer science and a concentration in artificial intelligence. So I like to use that background and do a lot of deep dive on the technology. I want to see if there's a novel method, if there's a real use for a crypto token or coin. I also like to see, are there aligned incentives with all of the bodies and what the governance and inflation rates and others. I think those are all important. And ultimately, the market opportunity, what is it addressing? So those are a lot of things that I like to look for.
So how do you assess value for these tokens like Bitcoin or any coin? What do you look for, and how do you figure out if it's overpriced or priced correctly or underpriced?
Yeah, for the most part, most crypto assets have network effects. And so network effects are, if you have one fax machine, there's not a lot of network utility. But as you add more fax machines, they become more and more utility. So as you add more users, the network utility gets greater. And it follows Metcalfe's law. So it's not linear, it's geometric. So I'm really looking for how to value that by how much network either unique addresses or how much network traffic each of those crypto assets are getting. So I like to follow that for a fundamental. And then I kind of break crypto assets into different asset classes. I'm looking at Ethereum and Bitcoin being core assets, and then platform companies that are looking to do smart contracts in various platforms as its own asset class. Looking at cryptocurrencies that are actually trying to be money, a digital transfer and store of value, and utility tokens. So each of those either performing a software or utility function or actually is backed by it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in each.
Do you ever look at the tokenomics of some of these ICOs and look at the value of the coin based on what people are placing on it? And how do you manage tokenomics? It seems like it's a very early stage marketplace, and so it seems like it can be hard to know how this token will be used or valued down the road given so many variables. How do you handle that?
It's Since we don't have a lot of fundamental yet, we're really kind of in some of the idea of tokenomics and getting aligned incentives is transformational. Right now, if you make a post on Facebook, you don't get paid anything. The investors of Facebook get paid. So what tokenomics provide is to get the users, the developers, the investors, all with aligned incentives. And I think that in itself is transformational. So it starts, could those tokenomics really add value to a particular product, looking for fit there? It's also just about team. There's only a limited amount of really good developers and resources, and who's on what project. I think projects, if you have as many years in blockchain technology, that makes a big difference. So I think that's an important factor.
What's an example of a crypto asset out there that you think is very well aligned and shows a good example of how the incentives are all going in the same direction for all the players?
I think basic attention token is interesting, to really being paid a token of attention versus the ad model has potential. It'll take a while, but it definitely has potential. I think if you see some of the issues that Facebook is having with on the Capitol Hill and others, the advertising space, how much data they have of yours is a problem. And there are tokens like BAT and Civic out there that are going to potentially disrupt and really address those issues.
What is your take on the SEC stance that basically all tokens are security tokens because of what people can do with it? I can take a token and sell it on an exchange. Therefore, if I call it a utility token, they consider it a security token because of what I could do with it. And of course, there's a lot of ways to mitigate that, but it seems like the SEC is coming in and stamping down hard. How do you think that's going to play out?
Yeah, I think Reid hearings on this year, and they were positive in the sense that they didn't want to stifle, but we have received letters that there may be coming down. I really think the argument can be made that utility tokens are more like soft than like a security, and ultimately income or dividends are not being created and therefore are not a security. So I'm not exactly sure how that's all going to play out. There's definitely regulatory risk in the market right now, but we'll see. This is a new asset class novel, and we'll need to see how it fits within existing.
Sure. Well, the blockchain is the underlying technology for all of this and is now entering a lot of different areas: supply chain, fintech, healthcare, identity, cybersecurity, etc. Where do you think the blockchain is going to fit best? Which sectors do you think will have the earliest wins with it?
I think the very first use case is obviously Bitcoin, with being a currency. A digital currency has so much more advantage over it takes a banking account to settle in days. And I think cryptocurrency can settle in minutes. And so I think that's a huge transformation. I think it's near frictionless, pay 50 cents or whatever it is for a transaction compared to what the paper model of money are. It's transformation. I think that's one of the issues is just the remittance market or the currency market in general. I think there's a lot to be done with voting. The idea of having an immutable record is very powerful. So with immutability, there is no ability to change that particular record. It's there and unchangeable. And so we haven't had a technology in the past that had that factor or capability. I think that will be important going forward.
And where do you think the blockchain is going as far as permissionless versus the other ways it could be implemented out there? Is it going to be built up to be this highly scalable, highly efficient thing, or will it be kept as a very comprehensive audit trail, immutable ledger? Because I hear both needs. I want to track everything that's ever happened, supply chain, or I really need something that's high performance, and I really don't need to track every piece of chewing gum that's out there, say fintech. Where do you think that's going to go?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I think for the most part, we're going to get both, and one will come before the other. So right now we have slower transactions, and what's possible is going to be that slower auditing record capability. With Lightning Network coming on, with EOS coming on in June, and with others, we're going to ultimately get that transactional capability. So I believe we'll have both, and it'll just be a matter of timing.
So, Jake, in the time we have remaining, what else should we cover?
Yeah, just for your listeners, I think I had a 20-year dream of being a fund manager, and there's a lot of different ways to get there. I didn't go to Stanford. I didn't get a job at Google, but having grit, staying at it, staying with it, really allowed me to finally realize the dream of being a crypto fund manager. That's it, I think.
Good. So, how best should listeners get back in touch with you? Website, email, what works best?
Yeah, you can find me on Angel List at Jake Ryan, or I also do a lot of long form content on Medium, and I'm at Jake_Ryan.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk today and hope to have you back in the future for a follow-on where we can dive into these topics in even more detail.
All right, great. Thanks, Hall.
Thank you so much. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.